Oh, it's already live. Man, today's fast. Google is on top of things. All right, guys. So, happy Friday. Today is Friday, April 22nd. You're hanging out with my community manager, the community built by, for, and managed by community managers. If you like what you're seeing today and maybe have an idea for a future topic, please head over to our website at www.mycmgr.com. Click on participate, give us your ideas, your friends, your topics, what have you. We'll get back to you. It's really your ideas that keep us hanging out on Fridays. So, what do we have for you today? Well, today is about Superuser programs. They're a really great way to elevate leaders in your community. We're going to hear a lot about that today. I'm going to just start out by letting everybody introduce themselves, and we'll go from there. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, if you're hanging out with us on Twitter, the hashtag is #CMGRHangout. So hello, everybody over there. So yeah, everybody can introduce themselves. Start with Stuart. Hey, Stuart.
Hey, how you doing? My name is Stuart Banky, and I am the community management manager for the Rackspace support community. So our job is to help people get answers in a many-to-many support format on things that aren't account specific, but are often related to troubleshooting. So.
Thanks for joining us. Hey, Nathan. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Hey, thanks so much. So yeah, my name's Nathan, as you just said. I'm a program manager for the Top Contributor program at Google. I have about 8 years of experience leading offline and online communities, and have built power user programs from scratch, and also had to rebuild power user programs sometimes.
Awesome. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. Hey, Holly, what's up?
Hi there. My name is Holly Golden. I work at Salesforce. I manage our community programs manager at Salesforce. So I work on our community program, specifically the MVP program, which is our champion super user program, and then our user group program. We have about 350 user groups and somewhere around 80,000 and 90,000 members around the world. So I work on both of those.
Awesome. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. Hey, Charlotte, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I hope everybody's okay. Charlotte here from London, representing Europe. I always like to say that when I come here. So good evening for European viewers. I work at Lithium. I'm a senior consultant, and I specialize in community management and social customer care. Super user programs is a bit of a passion project for me, so I actually got into this career starting off as a super user. And now I help quite a few big brands across Europe create the super user programs and run them and hopefully be successful with them. So we'll talk about that later on.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. Hey, Sherry.
Hey, how's it going? Hey, everyone, I'm Sherry. I'm the community manager at Magento, which is an open source e-commerce platform, and also co-producing JR Hangout here with Brew.
And I'm Brew, director of Awesome with Be the Change Revolutions, and co-producer here with Sherry. So, all right, I'm just going to jump into the first question, which is really a question for those who aren't familiar. What is a super user program?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll take a stab at that, and anyone else feel free to chime in. But basically, you think about your community, people are chatting with each other, and then you just have those people who are power users. They do it more, and they do it more, and suddenly we might call them super users, if you will. And so the super user programs are generally ways to collect those power users, the people who might be doing the most in your program, and reward them for what they're doing and help encourage them to take more and more of a role in the community so that they can help grow it.
I often see it as actually giving a user a stamp of approval. So the way we try and define super users are people who are irregularly active, so higher than the norm. So there will always be people who are very active. Having a program and creating something official means that you as a brand, you recognize them, and you work together and you collaborate on various elements, and that is what's defined in the program.
I also see it from another perspective too. So I agree, constant contributors, the people who are the ones who are really providing a lot of the content, but from our perspective too, we take a look at it to see who are the users that are really helping push forward the value and the mission of what our community stands for. So those who are providing that exceptional value whether they may not be very, very frequent contributors, but sometimes they provide some things that are extremely helpful beyond the ordinary. So we also kind of take a look at it from sometimes quality trumps quantity, but that's definitely something that we consider as well.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing. I think it's all encompassing, and it's kind of a mix of all of those different things. Some people, are really, really active in the community, but what they're putting into the community isn't at the level of what we would consider a super user. We want someone that's building really, really solid content or contributing in really meaningful ways for the rest of the community.
So they also, their advocates are different, but are some advocates super users? Kind of.
I think there can be some Venn diagram. I mean, when you're talking about these sorts of things, it's all very ambiguous.
Yeah.
And as we've heard from all of us, there's kind of different definitions. And so it's also, what are your goals? What are you trying to do? Are you looking to really separate out the advocates from the super users, or do you think there's value in combining them together in the recognition you're giving?
Cool. Well, so question number 2 for us is, how do you communicate the value of the program to new community members? So how do you tell someone who's new what the value of being a super user is?
So for us, we actually don't really focus on trying to express the value of being a super user or the super user program. We call it our MVP program. We really focus on getting people to understand the value of contributing to the community and contributing in meaningful ways to the community and what they get back from that. Definitely the MVP title it's an award that we give out, and a lot of people eventually want to get there, but we don't want people only contributing to the community so that they can get this title. So we really focus on, showing people what the value is in being involved in the community and giving them, a really wide range of ways that they can be involved so that they can find something they're really, interested in to contribute at the level that they would need to become an MVP at some point.
In our case, our community is really focused a lot towards support deflection into some of the other channels. And so the way that I help communicate, and this kind of goes into a very similar thing that you just mentioned, Holly, which is we don't necessarily talk about the MVP program. We mentioned it's part of the community contribution cycle, but we bring up the fact that these types of things that you put in here in terms of content that's helpful actually makes your job easier when you're looking at the channel. So a normal person may be watching multiple channels as part of their job, and having some of this information available for customers to find on their own prevents that work from coming into another place that you might actually be more busy doing more complicated things in. So from our perspective, we actually show our users the value of the support deflection that we're doing as part of our way of recruiting more membership into the community.
To add to that, I think it is important to communicate to the rest of the community that you have that group. Because again, if you have people engaging on your platforms with any kind of visual recognition, it's important that the rest of the community know who those people are. And it helps them be legitimate as well. So it means, okay, I've been approved by the brand, I've been recognized by the brand. It helps me, it helps with intrinsic motivation. It helps me be legitimate in the way I talk. In terms of also, it helps aspire, build aspiration. With one of the customers we launched a super user program with last year, we were able to prove that community members that became super users, the participation actually doubled because they had that kind of reward. It's like, the brand's recognizing me. But it also had an immediate effect with active users. So people that were regularly active after we put that group, since it had that motivational aspect, those people were joining in about 20% more as well. So it is very important, and it helps with the whole kind of natural ecosystem and development of the rest of the community.
Yeah, I mean, just to jump in from the Google perspective here, building on what Charlotte was saying, I think there's 2 things we've learned. The first thing is, as we've evolved, we've definitely gone from people who stumble their way into our program to actually telling them about the program much quicker. So when it started years ago, 10 years ago or so, people would be answering questions, and suddenly they just get a tap on their shoulders in the forums, and they know that they could get invited into the top contributor program. And in the last year, we've really realized, let's go down and reach out to these people earlier. Let's tell them about this. And so it's not just people who are stumbling in through activity, but they're also getting notifications via email and other things. So that's one important thing we've learned, is trying to go earlier into the funnel. And then the second, I think, important thing is you need to figure out who is going to be in this program and what motivates them. So we've talked to a lot of our users, and we found that really intrinsic motivations is what really matter for this group of people trying to help other people. And we found that those are mainly respect, recognition, and access. And so when we talk about the values of our program, we try and harp on those 3 points.
I love that. All right, question number 3 for the panel here is, how do you communicate the value of the program to internal business leaders?
Can I tell a story here?
Yeah,
I always like my
absolutely.
stories. So I actually, before working at Lithium, I was leading digital customer relations for a video game publisher. And we were working on this Japanese game franchise. And our European fans were very upset that the game that they wanted to play was not localized in their languages. So we'd localize it in English, but we wouldn't localize it in French, German, and Italian. And the fans were very angry at us. They were sending us lots of messages. They just didn't understand. So what we did is we actually invited community ambassadors, so people that were owning fan sites, people who were moderating on our forums, people who were active, and we invited them in our office for one day, and we put them with our localization team. And what we did was, this is how we localize a game. This is how we translate a game from Japanese into English, French, German, and Italian. And those people were able to spend a day and understand the process. And basically what they did afterwards is they went back to the community and said, hey guys, this is actually how you translate a video game. It's harder than we thought. So what it enabled us, and why it helped us prove to the leaders, was we were able to talk to these 10 people. Yes, it took a day for us to talk to these people, but these 10 people then spread the word. And we were actually calm and not nagged for about 3 years after that, because they were carrying the message, which was more legitimate than us going on and on about going, you know, it's actually quite hard to localize a video game. And that was something that was tangible and measurable that we managed to show to our leaders and say, well, this is what we did with not a lot of resources. Imagine what we could do if we actually managed to create a proper program and create some structure in this. Those people would be able to educate other people in words that we would never be able to do it, and save time and energy and effort as well. That's the end of my story, by the way.
I'll jump in here as well. You know, I think one of the things I've learned over my time in community is that I really try and talk about what we do internally as translators. I really think that there's, you know, this warm, fuzzy thing that is community, but really the business doesn't care that much about that fuzzy thing unless they can understand it. And so I think there's all these different languages you have to be able to speak. You have to be able to speak product. You have to be able to speak business. You have to be able to speak support. You have to speak marketing. And so we talk about ourselves a lot to product teams with things like, oh, we're part of the self-service support that you offer. So if you guys want people to be able to help themselves, you can work with the community. And we'll put metrics against that and show it to them. We also talk about, do you want your products to be excellent as product people? Probably. Do you think you can do that better without us or with us? And we'll show early warning signs of things that have gone wrong. And so we'll kind of use that way of translating between the different departments as the way that we try and communicate the values internally.
Yeah, I think for us, you know, it really just or for really anyone, it really just depends on the goals that you're setting for this program. You know, you can measure how effective it is across so many different departments right off the bat. There's no, I mean, we know there's a ton of value in these programs, but you can't start off trying to do everything for everyone. So it's really important to kind of focus the goals in the beginning for the internal stakeholders, which teams are you going to work the closest with, you know, as you're getting started, and then measure towards those. My boss, Erica Cool, who started the MVP program here at Salesforce, she wrote a really great blog post on CMX called, I think it's called How Erica Cool Measures the Force, and it kind of talks about how we measured brand mentions that we were getting from our MVPs, and, you know, different support deflection things that were happening because of the MVP program. So I think it's got some background there, but, you know, I think it's just really important to focus at first, because you could, I mean, it's community, you could work with every single team at the company right off the bat, but really figuring out where you want to start and measuring towards that, you'll have a lot of success internally being able to show the ROI.
I think you hit a really good point, which was about focusing on something and really trying to drive the value of that. So for our example, we have a couple of KPIs that we really try to look at that the leadership team seems to be involved with, and so that's what I really look at. I try to look at what's the ROI of the team, how many things like support deflections or additional IB or acquisition type activities have happened because of the community. So yeah, I think that was a really good point. It's like, and you don't need to do everything. You just need to find a couple of them that really resonate with the leadership and make sure you're doing your best to maximize them.
So as we were discussing this, Michael kind of had a little bit of a statement and question. There we go. I lost it. There we go. Michael says program. It presumes policy, which makes sense, but it also evokes a kind of institutionalism. Is that an issue? Anybody like to address that?
I have to admit, or go ahead. Does someone else want to jump in?
No, it's fine. I already have on Twitter, so you go ahead.
I have to admit, I find that word not to be appealing as well. I don't think we've run into it completely externally or with users, but internally, myself, I have a problem with it, which is I think that we should be building experiences. I think what we're doing is we're creating a brand and we're creating an experience, and calling it a program, I would take that word out if I could communicate what I was trying to do. The tricky part is that requires often more budget or more branding or more marketing, and so it's not always easy to do, but I do think of what we do as creating experiences, and so the word program does kind of rub me the wrong way too, but I haven't had major problems with it.
I actually love the term program because it means that it's something structured, it's something formalized, it's something that's been thought through, that's part of the company culture. I mean, one thing that's really important is that you do create some structures. Is like who gets in, who gets out if they're being a bit of a is there any actual form of recognition? How does that tie in with potential subscriptions? Are there any perks? It just makes sure that you don't have one person says, hey, he got a free video game, why didn't I get a free video game? Or that person's actually insulting your company, why are you still recognize him as an ambassador? Having this program just creates a framework. Again, it's the stamp of approval. It's like the people who have the stamp and the people who don't have the stamp.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. It just shows that this is something that's supported by the company, and it's recognized by the company that you're working for, and of course that there's structure around it. And I think that there has to be, especially as the program grows and more people are interested in being super users or MVPs or champions. They're going to want to know why they are or aren't getting in, and so having something a little bit more official, I think. Legitimizes the program, and then also gives you something to point to when those kinds of questions come up. And then, another thing that's interesting is when we award people the Salesforce MVP twice a year, and then they're up for renewal every year. And when people, I've heard this a lot, when people become Salesforce MVP, they start getting recruiters reaching out to them constantly because we've built it as this like recognizable program and brand. That it's something people want to put on their LinkedIn or they want to put it on their resume. And I think that calling it a program or making it a program really gives it that structure to do so.
And I don't necessarily think that program's something that is a bad word. I mean, like everybody said, it kind of shows that there's a little bit of formality behind it. But on the flip side, and kind of going into what Nathan was saying, it's like I think there's a way to kind of marry the building the experiences aspect of it, and then also being able to show what those experiences are doing to contribute to the company. And that's where sort of the program aspect of it comes in, is being able to combine the right hand and the left hand in order to say, here's kind of what I'm providing back to you by running this initiative on behalf of the organization.
Yeah, I guess I would challenge the idea that you can call it something other than the word program and still have it be structured. Like I think you can do both of those things at the same time. So I don't know what you guys think about that.
We called ours a community initiative externally, if that makes you feel more comfortable. But that structure in place was actually extremely important.
Right. Exactly.
And conveying the messaging of who's in there and why and what's happening with the program and what the point of it is, what the benefits are, is also really important. And so that's where that structure comes into play. But if you don't like the word program, call it something else. Yeah. I think program is just a business term that a lot of people understand, and that's why it gets used.
Yeah, I wonder if it has a lot to do even just with the company culture on what it gets called, right? Um, how it needs to get called something in order to get some budget. All right, so for your programs, like, are your super users internal, external, or both for you guys?
On our end, most of ours are internal, and it's driven by a lot of the customer interactions that we have within the one-to-one channels, and figuring out what content doesn't exist and placing it into the places where we have a many-to-many experience. But we also do have a handful of folks that are external power users, and so we recognize them as well. But most of ours on our end is driven by internal focus, though we're also looking at seeing what we can do to expand that in the long term.
Ours are external. For the most part, it's interesting because sometimes after someone's an MVP, we end up hiring them. That's happened quite a few times over the last year. It's just, we call it like the circle of life. But we focus primarily on external as well. We have partners that can be MVPs, but not internal Salesforce folks.
Yeah, ditto. Ours are external mostly. We have hired one or two as well.
It's interesting. I remember one of the hangouts. I think it was a recruiting, like the idea of recruiting in community, and I remember one of the pieces of advice a recruiter gave was to join the community of a place where you might want to work and get familiar and help out and volunteer and everything else. So it's cool to hear that you guys have some good case studies of people getting hired through like a super user program.
So what we do tend to recommend to our customers is not to neglect employee engagement, especially when it comes to community. I mean, some of the most vibrant communities, we have one in Spain, Leroy Merlin, which is a DIY store. They really promote and encourage employees to go and engage on their online community, and they've created a program for it, but they've created a separate one. So they called it the Ambassador Program, whereas more for the external people, it's the Superuser Program, just because, again, you engage differently with employees, the potential perks, the way you're going to train them up, the way you're going to want them to get involved is going to be a bit different. So having two separate programs means that you can tackle it probably more adapted to the audience, and it's another way of, again, nurturing employee engagement within your online communities. But I would recommend maybe having them separated. Again, different information, potentially conflict of interest as well.
So what do you guys look for when you're identifying super users? What kind of traits do they have? You know, where do you think, like, oh, this person needs to be a part of the group?
I've kind of established what I call an elite criteria. Are the members in our community that are super users are called elite on our end. And what I really look for is I look for someone who has a tendency to be social. I look for someone who has content that is helpful, is eager to share that content, and also is not confined by their role. So the way that our community works with getting content from other places is we have a lot of our content coming from people who are doing a lot of other jobs from inside the company. So they might be a technician for one end, or they might be a product manager or an engineer or software developer, and they have a lot of work to do over there. So these people have a lot of knowledge that could also benefit our customers, and when they're willing to kind of step outside of that role for a little while and do some contribution within the community, then I can focus more on those people and then having them help me identify more folks within those groups that would also be willing to contribute.
So we also have some specific criteria that we look at. You know, Salesforce is huge, and so we have a bunch of different community channels that people can contribute to. And so each channel a little bit has its own set of criteria in the way that people can make the most valuable contributions. And so, those are pretty defined. But then we also kind of have our secret sauce. We look for other characteristics in the people that we bring into the MVP program, so that we can see that they're leaders, they're accessible, and that they've demonstrated these things. Because that's what we want out of this MVP community, is people that are going to be leaders in the community and that are going to be accessible for community members. So it's not defined 9 posts and 6 of this and 7 of that, and I don't think it should be, because that'll keep the people that are motivated just by getting the award out of the program. But we do have pretty it's pretty mapped out depending on which channel we're looking at bringing these people in from. Another thing is that we open it up to the community, so our community actually nominates the people that go into this program, and then we take all of those names, and then our current MVPs go through and give their feedback, because at this point we have 188 MVPs and a 2 million person community, so we can't be the eyes and ears that all of these super users or MVPs can be, which is amazing, and that's part of how we've been able to scale the program. So they are all in their respective communities and channels, and they can see who's bubbling up to the top and contributing, and so they give feedback on all the candidates to us. And then we have an internal team of stakeholders, the people that are in all of those communities internally, that also give feedback to us. So it's an interesting, multi-step process of how we choose the people that come into the program, but we definitely have our community really heavily involved in that.
I think it's very important that the people that you do choose have to be legitimate to the eyes of the other people of the community. If you start getting people in that nobody knows, that don't actually represent the values of your brand, then it's going to decredibilize your efforts in creating this initiative or program, however you want to call it. But the legitimacy doesn't necessarily have to come, as Holly said, by the number of posts. It's really about influence. I always love to give the example of when our chief community officer posts on the community, he always gets like 150 kudos, whereas when I do, I get 20. It's all about legitimacy, and it doesn't mean that I wouldn't necessarily be a good super user. It means that I would potentially be a different kind of super user. I'm also going to kind of jump onto what I posted on Twitter. I actually posted the answer is don't be a dick, which is my golden rule for the internet, is when you're going to be associating yourself with someone, it has to be someone that you would be proud to associate yourself with. So if it's somebody who doesn't respect your brand, your values, you don't like the way he talks or the way he engages with the rest of the community, then he's definitely someone you shouldn't associate yourself with. And that's okay. And sometimes having an honest conversation with those people and explain to them why can go a long way. It's all about education.
Yeah, and we have that built into the list of things that will qualify you as well, which is, it doesn't say don't be a dick, but it does say that you're a good steward of the brand. And so there's that quality of respect there, because if you're backing someone and putting your stamp on them, they shouldn't be running around publicly complaining about every little thing that you do either. But the main thing that I look at really when I looked at, which is kind of leads into question 6 as well, but where to look for them and what to look for was who's actually contributing to the community in a way that helps move the community forward. Because we have no shortage of people talking, and we have no shortage of people connecting, but who's actually working on things that help move the community together as a whole. And that was probably the main thing that I looked at.
Well, yeah, so since, question 6 kind of does blur a little bit with question 5, and I know, Holly, you touched a little bit even before just about channels, but let's just jump into, this variation, which is how do you determine which channels to focus on for your super user program?
I'll jump in here.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
There's just that right amount of silence where we knew one of us had to say something. I'll say that for us, there's what we want to do and there's what we do. So what we want to do is we want to be everywhere the user is. We want to be able to help people wherever they're having trouble across the internet, and I mean, ideally even offline. But we actually, as Google, are always very focused on data. So we're trying to find the ones where you can actually show where you can have an impact, and that's how we pick what channels we look at. If we could show that in all of our different channels, we'd be finding people everywhere. And currently, we're looking kind of on Twitter and on our forums and on some third-party forums as well. But we're always trying to push the needle there, and I'm really interested to hear if other people are doing similar or different things.
From our end, we are mostly looking at what's going on within our support forums, but that's actually something that we're investigating on our end too, is trying to figure out where are all the remainder of our active community audience that we're not capturing, right? So whether it's internal or external. So we're in a very similar boat, trying to figure out how do we not only identify where those folks are at, but how do we put something around them so that we can actually understand what they're doing, where they are, what types of things they're interested in, and then cultivate the power users that we find within those.
So, question number 7 is, how do you develop a program that truly feels valuable to the super user? So let's talk about that for a minute.
I think it's all about the relationship you build with them, and kind of when you create a program, it should definitely be two-way. So obviously there's an advantage for you. You've got these amazing people who work for you for free. That's amazing. And they want to be in a relationship with you guys as a brand. What is important there is to kind of build on the intrinsic motivation. The risk is for a lot of brands to just go and throw things at those people. It's like, hey, you're super engaged, let me just throw stuff at you. Let me just give you subscriptions, let me give you swag, let me give you everything. And the problem by you doing that is not only are you hindering the intrinsic motivation by kind of creating that extrinsic motivation, so you're adding an extra carrot to them, you also creating expectations. So if you start scaling your program and you get 200 people, you're not going to be able to give 3 free licenses. You're not going to be able to give them, presents or swag or whatever, or fly them over every time. So the intrinsic motivation, of course, is very important. You have to set expectations, and if you want to give them presents, see the presents more as a perk, as something that that you think about them, more than something that they can expect, because that is definitely something that's not good on the long term, and it just puts the wrong expectations for the people who are part of your program.
I will second that. Now that we are close to a 200-person program, it's just the attention and types of perks and things that the MVPs could get in the very beginning when it was 15 people is very, very different from what we're able to do now. And the team has not grown that much for how much the program has grown. And so I think that's a really, really important thing to note, is that you want to make sure that you're framing this the right way to grow, because a sense of entitlement can happen, and that can happen even if you're not constantly giving them different swag and things like that. But it's just really important to set that right tone in the beginning, so a year or 2 years down the line, as you're growing, that there isn't this massive sense of entitlement, which has happened, and we've seen it happen before, and it has an effect on that community of MVPs or super users. So I think it's really important to tackle that in the beginning. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, Charlotte, that you said, it's great that these people work for you for free. And I just wanted to kind of come back to that, because when we talk about the value that we give the people that are involved in the program, I think it's really important to make sure that, especially internally, people really understand what these people do and what they're here for, and that this isn't a job title. They do not actually work for your company. They are doing great work, and there's a huge benefit of that, but making sure that there's no expectation of that, I think has been something that we've had to work on here for sure, because we do want people to keep contributing. We want them to keep contributing because they want to, not because they feel like they have to keep this title. And it's not a job title. And so when someone reaches out to me and says, hey, I'd love the MVPs to work on this thing for 40 hours over the next 6 weeks, it's like, no, they don't work for us. You can find someone you can pay to do that. This is a completely separate thing, and I think it takes a lot of education for people internally, and then also externally, so that these people in the groups don't feel like they always have to say yes to these types of things, or don't feel like they're required to do all of this. So just framing internally and externally that it's not a job, but it's a reward, I think is really important.
I really believe in that. Thank you for bringing that up, because it's a great way to help the channel scale. But one of the things that I see is whenever it starts becoming a job for the power user and they actually feel like it's a job, they become totally disengaged, and now you're looking for a new user to kind of replace them and kind of come into that element. So we're really swag light when it comes to users. Like, I'll give them something a little nice, and then what I do from there is work on more of cultivating them, so I become an advocate for them within our organization. So if they go for jobs, I say, hey, let me write a recommendation, or let me go talk to that manager and tell them how much you contribute outside of your role to the greater good of the organization. I also do things like I bring them into strategy conversations. So I'll sit down with them and say, hey, we're looking into this improvement, or we're looking at maybe growing our presence into this channel. What do you guys think about it? How do you think we should do it? What do you feel the current presence is? And I'll actually get them to contribute in that manner, because then they feel like they actually have a voice in the direction of the community that they want to be a part of. And I really feel like bringing them into that adds so much more value into them sticking around and helping grow that power user base than doing something like throwing a lot of like t-shirts or trips or whatever you can at them.
I've actually got a really, sorry, you haven't spoken yet, so I'll talk afterwards.
Oh, no, go ahead.
It's just an example to that is we did a Superuser event with one of my customers, and my customer again was very eager to give them lots of stuff. And part of the Superuser event is, again, we're kind of collaborative building that Superuser group with the customers, the Superusers. And the customer, the community manager, asked the Superusers, is like, well, what do you want in return? Expecting they were going to ask for stuff, free things. And they ended up saying, oh, talk to product managers, we want to be able to be going to betas, we want to be able to trial products. And the community manager wasn't expecting that. It was a very good I told you so moment, but that really shows that the people are engaged because they want to be with your brand and your products and what you're building. They're not in there for t-shirts and mugs.
Yeah, I'd kind of like to take this question a little bit from a different angle, which is more of a kind of research angle. So, you can talk about trying to figure out what's valuable for them and asking them. But one thing I've found is that people don't always know what's valuable to themselves. And so sometimes you actually have to dig in deeper. I did a talk about this at Fever Bee Sprint last year, but the idea of segmenting out your users into different subgroups can kind of get beyond that surface level interest you often hear and you think you understand. So when I was at IDEO, we actually found that we thought everyone wanted to help and to sort of create impact in the world. But really, there was one group of people, this group of entrepreneurs, who were driving value for all of the other subgroups in the ecosystem. And so sometimes actually taking a deeper look into who's driving the value, what different types of people there are, you might find that it's not necessarily a perk or access or beta, but it can actually be a certain subset of the users are actually driving value for everybody else. And so you really want to make sure that those users are coming into the program and that their needs are being met and that they're helping everybody else feel really truly a part of it. So it can sometimes be more complicated, and often like this kind of segmentation approach can really help you dive in deeper.
Yeah, I like that, and because in a way, sometimes I bet there's value in different ways for different people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, let's jump into let's see, that was question 7. So question 8 is, how do you grow super users once they're in the program? What did you mean by that, Sherry, about growing super users? Growing the number of super users, or like making them grow?
So shout out to Stuart, which is where most of these questions came from,
right.
And now I will deflect that question about the question to him.
Okay, I can answer that. So what I meant by growing it is, actually you kind of covered it. So one is just growing the base of it, right? Because more the merrier. But specifically what I was kind of leaning towards was actually growing the user themselves. So when someone comes in, I never really feel like when they come into our elite program that they're a complete product, right? There's always stuff that they want to do more of. There's always things they want to learn more of. So how do you work with those people and identifying them? I mean, like one of the things I do is I actually sit down with all of them and say, hey, what are the things that you want to know more about? What are some connections I can help you make? Do you need some advocacy to go start a new project inside and I just kind of do some extracurricular things from exactly what my day-to-day is to go help them individually. I have individualization in my strengths finder, so I like to kind of tackle things on a one-on-one basis when I can. So that's what I was kind of meaning by it. I'm just interested to hear how everybody else kind of tackles either growing the base or growing the person.
I went into a little about how we grow our base. We use our community and have a really specific nomination process for that. But growing the person, I think, people in our community will continue to contribute at different levels. And when somebody becomes an MVP, we want them to continue contributing, but we want to give them opportunities to contribute in different ways. So my team actually sits on our product team, and I think it'd be really interesting to hear where you guys are sitting in your organization, but we sit on our product team. So a lot of what I do is focused on getting product feedback and getting our community really involved in the product process. So one of the ways that MVPs contribute is that they sign an NDA when they come on as an MVP, and then they get access to our roadmaps early, they get sessions with product teams, they get to do hands-on feedback and UX sessions. So giving them opportunities to contribute in a completely different way, I think that's really, really important. And so we do most of that through, there's a lot of ways they get opportunities to speak at different conferences, they get a budget to travel and speak at different user groups, but that's just kind of a level up from where they were contributing before, and it brings a lot of value to them as well.
Yeah, we sit in over within our company. The community team sits within the support organization. So that's where you often hear a lot. I'm very focused on deflections and kind of growing those engagements and growing that content that's specific around those things that customers are interested in learning about, so they can move back to their day-to-day. We focus on that, though we do also have ties into kind of our brand marketing and IB marketing activities. I mean, community is always a bit of that gray area, right? And if you live in one place, that doesn't mean that's just what you do. So our primary KPIs are focused around support deflection, and the secondary around growth.
Yeah, for us, I'm going to go back again to IDEO because I think it was interesting when I was at IDEO working a bit with some of the people from the community roundtable and this framework that they have, and one of the parts they mention is how does the community feel it has leadership over itself? And so we started looking in the ways in which our community could actually take more leadership of where it was going, where we were going as in sort of the brand. And we found that there were specific storytelling examples and specific sort of screening examples in our process, which is basically a way to find new innovative ideas where they could actually help and have more leverage that they suggested. And so then we found ways to recognize and suggest people to join that. And I think that kind of figuring out where are they trying to go, like where are they, like maybe they started 2 years ago, and the reason that they started is a different reason than what's motivating them today. And so how do you think about what's motivating them today and giving them that opportunity to grow in the program?
How do you guys then leverage these super users to grow the community?
We have them be the eyes and ears for us where we can't be in all of the channels and communities that they're involved in, and that's how they can help us with this like nomination and award process. I think that's a really big part of it. And then now also, since we have 188 MVPs, we actually have MVP teams. So within the MVP program, people join an MVP team, and we have a care team, an engagement team, well, I guess sort of an engagement team, a strategy team, and then a mentorship team. And the mentorship team, they actually will take everybody that was in this nomination process but didn't quite make it and let the mentorship team know, and they go out into the community and they start working with these people on how they can build their brand in the community and contribute more in the community. So the mentorship team is really, really active in doing that, and we've now branched out so we can have mentorship MVPs in different languages, and that really is helping us grow the community, but then also scaling within that MVP community, like the care team. They send out birthday cards and onesies when people have babies and really handle a lot of that. And so it's really the community running the community in the way that they want to. We give them a lot of ownership over that so it meets their needs the way that they would like it to. And it's helping us grow massively. Even though we don't have any goals around growth, we would never say we want 100 new MVPs this year. It's quality over quantity.
I think it's often about giving your users a mission as well. Let them help you. If you want to build a community knowledge base, working with them and say, hey, does anybody want to look after this knowledge base? And as somebody else mentioned, I think it was Nathan, different people have different motivations. Some people might love, writing knowledge base articles. Some other users might love run local user groups. So give them a mission, tell them how they can help you, and chances are there will be some people in there who will be motivated and engaged enough to help you with that. So it's important that you do give them that drive and be honest and transparent. That's what a super user program is about as well.
Yeah, we drive using the elite to actually help show people how easy it is to become members of the community. So we have a lot of people who feel like it's going to be really hard to become involved and provide things that are helpful. And so I work with them to say, hey, find some people who are really interested and meet those qualities and get them to just contribute a couple of times and work with us. And after they do it a couple of times, they go, hey, this is actually pretty easy. Like, it's that fear of the first couple of items and thinking that it's just this insurmountable wall that they're going to have to climb over to be a member of the community. And when they realize I can come in here and add a little bit of quick content and it really helped a lot of people, that tends to break that down, and we really leverage the elite group within our organization to be the ones who are helping us go into the other groups that we can't get to touching and helping us build those relationships with them.
So we actually just launched ours officially a couple months ago, but had our first round of super users on stage last week. I think it was last week. I've lost all sense of time. But the cool thing that's happened is since we've put them in the spotlight, and we only have 20, and we're keeping it intentionally small because we're doing quarterly councils with them and whatnot. But what's been really cool is, like, one of the guys has already had people come up to him repeatedly and ask him how to get involved speaking at conferences or how to get more involved in the community. And then we only had one girl this year, and she has been repeatedly approached asking for advice on, like, how to be a strong woman in the Magento community and things of that nature. And just, like, really congratulated on being a role model and whatnot. And so it's been really cool just to see how putting them in the spotlight like that is encouraging more members of our community to aspire to be that way.
Well, I think to wrap things up, let's talk about kind of some tips here. So, if people out there watching this are going to be creating or working with a super user program, just love to hear from each of you. Some of your hashtag pro tips.
Don't forget you're working with people who are extremely passionate. And who may, I saw somebody tweet about it, who sometimes may have egos to flatter. Some people might not always be the easiest people to work with. We do say it's a program, it does require structure, but it does require for you to take time to build those relationships and get to know the people you work with. Somebody we worked with, one of my customers, he said that the best thing I did as a community manager or program manager is go out for coffee with my super users, and it helps get to know them better. So they're human beings, don't forget that, and try and put yourself in their shoes sometimes. Again, when I have customers who don't really understand, it's like, why would somebody spend 30 hours a week working for me or helping me on my community and stuff like that? It's like, well, put yourself in the shoes of a groupie of a massive band, and all they want to do is go and follow the band around and tour worldwide. I mean, ultimately, they are the fans. They are your best groupies. Not in a negative way, of course, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I'd like to build on what you said too, because I think getting to know your super users is always great, but there's also a subset of them that are kind of the influencers of the super users. And to me, those are the people that are 100% mission critical. You go out and get coffee with, you build a relationship with, because when something goes wrong or when you want to change something, those are going to be the people that if you don't have on board, you're not going to be able to get anybody else on board. And so I do think that kind of subgroup of the super users is just 100% critical. You get to know them, you spend at least an hour, maybe a couple hours with them, and you make sure that when times get tough, they're on your side.
We actually formalize that, and that's one of our teams, our strategy team. It's like people in the group that when we want to run a communication buy, we run it by them first and see if there's anything we're missing, or see if they can get a pulse on everybody before we do it. So I think it's been amazing to have that group of people that we can always turn to.
Yeah, and actually making sure that you also have everybody aligned around the purpose, right? So if they understand the value of the community, they understand what they're trying to contribute to, and they understand where they're at, and then like you mentioned, sorry Nathan, where aligning who are the influential ones and working with them, that's how you end up getting a lot of the growth and a lot more of the initiatives actually being created. And it doesn't have to come from a top-down approach. It can become more of an organic feature.
Yeah, and the other thing I was just going to say, and this kind of goes along with that, is just to make sure that your community is a part of this process of building the program, that it's your wider community or your super users, but get them involved and make sure that this is meeting what they need and what they want so it can be successful. I think it is for them, so making sure that they're really involved in building it is really important.
Can I ask a couple other questions? I had a couple things I was curious to hear from other people who run super user programs. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
No.
You read my mind. It was exactly where I was going to go. I was going to say, well, we got a little time, so does anybody want to have any last comments or questions for each other? So go ahead, man. Take it away.
Awesome. Well, yeah, one question I have for everybody is about sort of people's journey through your super user experience. I'm curious if people find that there is a length of time or a limit in which someone should be involved or shouldn't be involved, and if there are kind of parameters around which you do think about that or don't think about that, or think it's a good or bad thing.
It's a really good question. So I'm not going to answer, but I want to hear answers too.
Darn.
I would say it depends on how long someone wants to be around, right? I mean, you don't want to hold them hostage to being a super user in your community. I mean, you want them to be as active as long as they're passionate about a brand and what the mission of what you're trying to accomplish within the community is, and to leverage their expertise when you can and gain insight from them and help them grow the advocacy. And at some point, everybody's going to move on to something. So I can't expect everybody to stick around forever, but I want to try to identify those users and maximize their impact while they can. And I don't know if there's any specific time or anything like that I would ever consider forcing someone to stick around in order to be a super user.
Can I tell a story?
Yeah, tell a story.
Sorry. Yeah. So as I have shared on the Community Manager Appreciation Day blog, I started off my kind of community story as being a super user myself. So to make it short, I was managing a fan club. Please don't laugh. But it was the website, the MySpace at the time, and it was for a music band. And I was working directly with the music band, helping gigs, promotion, a lot of things. And it's a pretty big band in Europe. I mean, they do fill venues of about 10,000 people quite easily. It's very niche though. Anyway, and I left when I realized that they took me for granted, and I was spending about 35 hours a week helping them, and they started asking me to pay, and I was in business school, and I just didn't have enough time, and I just realized that my values as a person did no longer align with the band I was working with. So that was a personal choice to decide to leave and not get involved anymore. And sometimes that's what happens, sometimes some business decisions will lead some of you super users to not agree with what you do anymore, and they will just leave, and you can't tie them to the chair. Second example I like to give is I'm currently a Yelp Elite, so I'm kind of part of the Yelp super user group myself, and I'm kind of smashed with work at the moment, so I haven't been writing my reviews, and I've been getting gentle reminders from the community manager saying, hey, if you want to stay Elite, Charlotte, you're going to have to start writing reviews. And I'm just like, I've got other priorities right now. Really sorry. Hope to see you next year if I don't make it. But, and the community manager was giving me simple and kind reminders saying, if you don't write enough reviews this year, we might not renew you next year. But it was an honest, transparent conversation, and I'm aware of it, and it's okay. So life happens, and that's just it.
One of the things that we've been running into, I don't know what the perfect amount of time is. I definitely think there's some point where these people might want to leave, and it's probably better if they do. But what we did just a couple months ago is we introduced a Hall of Fame program. So if you had been nominated and awarded 5 years in a row, that's a long time to be contributing. And if people just life happens and you can't contribute at that level anymore. And so if somebody had already been at the 5-year mark and went through the renewals process and maybe wasn't doing enough to get renewed, we gave them this title of like MVP Hall of Fame. And then they still get a couple of the benefits. They still have this branded title. They're still recognized as they should be because they're pretty legendary in the community. They don't have the full range of perks and benefits that everybody else has, but they're still recognized. And I think that's really important because they've given so much, and they can't be expected to give on that level forever. So that I think people have been really happy with. And then the only other thing that's come up recently that I'm trying to navigate is maternity leave, paternity leave, parental leave. So we've got users that really still want to be in the program, really want to be involved. They don't want to lose their title, but this comes up, and so we actually are going to try to figure out how we can do something around this instead of just, well, you're out this year, because there are people that have been in the program for years and wouldn't be at Hall of Fame quite yet, but it happens like that. And so I think just being fluid and always being open to making changes and listening to people's feedback is really important.
That's super interesting, like a maternity leave type thing, yeah.
Well,
and as Charlotte was saying, I mean, just sometimes life happens, right? I mean, whenever you volunteer, like, hey, sometimes you have a busy month or a busy 3 months or whatever. So, yeah. Cool. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with us. Wow, what a great, awesome conversation. I hope you got a lot out of it as well, hanging out, listening to each other. And thank you for contributing. Sherry, do we know what's going on next Friday? Saw you typing.
Sorry, I had to get back to this window. No, someone's climbing up their sailboat right in my peripheral vision. It's very distracting. Anyway, next week we're talking about the importance of integrity in communities and the impact that has.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for hanging out with us, guys. Have a great weekend. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Friday. Bye.
thanks.
Bye. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye-bye.